Well, I think that there is an equivalent in politics of thinking about brand equity in the same kind of way as you think about it in commercial terms.
I think you're right.
I'll tell you some thoughts I had about politics because, there was a South Australian election
Malinauskas
which went predictably.
dominating victory, yeah.
And what's the main thing people were talking about
One
in that
nation,
election?
right?
One nation, which I think only won one seat, didn't they?
Did they get one?
They got one. I think they got one seat and a lot of votes.
Yeah.
It's a funny system.
Yeah.
They got more votes than the Liberal Party
Yeah.
and the coalition, but the coalition got
Because all
quite
the
a few
preferences
seats.
flowed away.
Exactly. And so I think people are wrong about the rise of one nation. Do you think people are right or wrong about the rise of one nation?
What wrong about what?
Well, but they're saying there's a rise of one nation.
You don't think there's a rise?
No. I think basically the Liberal brand is very bad. And Malinauskas is basically a centrist. And Australians are basically centrists. That's the country. I know it doesn't feel like it a lot of the time, but they're basically centrists.
Well, there's enough. The majority of Australians are centrist. I think
sure
there's a lot of
they
people
are.
on each side.
For sure they are. And so you go and you create a leader, or a leader comes who's a centrist.
Yeah.
They're going to get elected, right?
Yeah. And he's also very impressive. Very impressive
And
politician
hasn't done
as well.
anything wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main objective of
Yeah.
being a politician. And so
He's my favourite politician in the country.
I know that, and I don't disagree with your assessment of him, right? But I've thought about politics and the idea of brand. So you got a centrist, people are going to vote for him, but some people want to protest, and some people don't want to vote for a centrist. So what do you do if you want to protest or not vote for a centrist? So if there's a chance of the centrist losing, you don't want to do any protesting, but this guy's not losing this election. The election's over before it started in South Australia. So if you vote for the Liberal Party, this is my theory. If you vote for them, that looks like a real vote, and so but no one wants to vote for them at the moment in South Australia. And so if you really want to protest, there's only one option for protesting, and that is to vote for One Nation, or I guess the Greens, right? And so I think that's why One Nation picked up votes. And I think if there was actually a chance of them getting any power, they wouldn't get those votes, especially in South Australia. I mean, it used to be the most left-wing state. Now probably Victoria is.
Yeah.
Oh, well, ACT is not a state, but like ACT, Liberal government, they should disband the party in South Australia. In ACT, it's never going to win an election.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about brand. So we say brand has got three things: forgiveness, reduced acquisition, and pricing power.
Yeah.
So how do you apply that to political parties? Because they've got brands. And so I was thinking through this, and I thought, well, forgiveness, that's easy.
Yeah.
Like if you've got a very strong brand, like the problem is there are more important roles in politics than politicians who are competent to do them. And so that's why you get these nuclear explosions of people doing crazy things who are ministers, because they are not competent to be involved in those endeavours, right? And so that's what forgiveness does. And if you've got a good brand, you can survive these scandals.
Yeah.
And so that's easy. But then I was thinking, how do you think about CAC? Acquisition cost and pricing power, and this is the conclusion I came to. So I think acquisition cost, in a sense, is a bit more self-explanatory than pricing power, because
What's the whole point of
it's
elections?
how much you have to spend and how
vote.
loud you have to be in order to get votes. And a better brand, you have to do less convincing for people to buy you.
And some people just know
basically.
you will always vote for you.
That's
So
right.
You get what you almost call organic acquisition that way.
Exactly. And so I think that's the acquisition benefit of a strong brand. And also, if people don't know your brand, you have to run a lot of ads to convince people that you're trustworthy. And if they know your brand, you run fewer ads, or there's word of mouth. I think the same is true for politics. And then we come to pricing power, which is tricky. And so I really thought deeply about this. And this is where I got to on pricing power. I think pricing power is how bold you can be with the controversial nature of policies that you put forward and still be re-elected. Because you think about pricing power in a commercial context, it means raising the price and people still buying you because they trust you and it's worthwhile. And so in politics, when John Howard wanted to do a GST, he had to have what's called a lot of political capital. But I think that's a form of pricing power. Like he could basically go out and do these things that made some people say, hang on a second, but they still trusted him enough to buy what he was selling anyway. And he took it to an election, right? And I think the inverse of that is what the Liberal Party and One Nation do. So I think One Nation's got a very poor brand. And so what they do is the political equivalent of discounting, which is terrible, which is extreme policies.
Well, Clive Palmer was the Greens.
Clive Palmer was the most extreme example of that. Let's go and just say everything 90% off. That was his messaging. And so you get people's attention, but it makes people very skeptical about what you're selling, and in the long term does material damage to your brand. And so I think that there is an equivalent in politics of thinking about brand equity in the same kind of way as you think about it in commercial terms.
I think you're right. I think I guess the small problem with your view on Liberals is we've seen around the world these sort of centre-right parties being decimated. Liberals have got the additional problem of Teals because that was really a creation of Morrison. Had Morrison not been so terrible, Teals probably wouldn't have happened. So they lost the
because he couldn't get women to vote.
Yeah, for him. The Wets and so the more moderate Liberals, which we probably both would be, or voted Teals, not that we vote Teals, but voted Teals, and then you've got the whole right flank now being absorbed by One Nation, which is what we're seeing with Trump and Farage really in the UK and US. So I think the Liberals really have no base anymore. So I think they've got some real issues. They've lost both sides of the base.
Agree.
And when Liberals are doing well, call it the Turnbulls, call it or Howard. Even Howard in the early days was a bit more moderate. He became probably a bit more extreme later on. But call it the Frasers. Liberals do well when they're much closer to the centre. And when they get pushed to the right, they have some real problems. Now they can't go to the right because One Nation's so good up, and they can't go to the left because Teals are so good.
You say they can't go to the right, but actually, if you read the commentary from people inside the Liberal Party, what you're saying is correct. All of the moderates have been ejected. What you hear from the Liberal Party is we have to move further right in order to combat One Nation. It's the complete wrong strategy.